Welcome to another episode of Crazy Nights, the Australian Kiss podcast. I'm one of your Crazy Nights co-host, Jamie McNichol, and as always, and with a great warm welcome, is David Fowler. How you going, David?
Yeah, good, thanks, Jamie. Ready for tonight's great show and great interview that we've got coming up.
Yes, it's a big interview for us, David. I'd say all the other interviews that we have had over the last 13 weeks has been great as well. They've been awesome, and I want to thank everyone for being on that. But this one I have to be up there among the best so far, or it will be the best. We want to personally thank EricCarr.com for forwarding this on to tonight's guest that's joining us, and with a great warm welcome. And on the phone from the UK, it's Alan G. Parker. How you going, Alan?
I'm good. I'll say to you good evening. Of course, it's still good morning here. It looks quite bright outside, so I'll find out how good a day it is in the next half hour when I venture out later on, I guess. That'll be that. So.
Well, for those people who like to know, there has been an interview floating around the last week of this new project, and I want to say it's a project, it's a doco movie of 40 years of Kiss. You wanted the best, you got the best. And Alan is the director of that, and he's putting it all together, and I believe it's still not complete yet. There's still a long way to go to the top if you want to rock and roll, as they say in the rock and roll music, but there's still a long way. But we're going to have to focus on to the now, basically, only up to now. We can't predict what could happen in the future because we don't know. But we've got a lot of questions. We're coming from a different angle. We've got so many great questions we'd like to ask, and I think, David, you'd like to start off.
Yeah. How long's this project been in the works, Alan? Up from when it started up until now?
Well, as you probably know, you were just mentioning earlier, we did a movie called Hello Quo. That was our last one, was a Status Quo official documentary. Mm-hmm. The original plan had been that we were actually in conversation towards the end of that documentary with a massive rock and roll band. I can't say who because in the end the deal wasn't done, but it would have been a big project for us. It would have been, I would say equally as big as the one we're doing now.
Yeah.
That was all going very well. All the paperwork was being signed off. My business manager and my producer were getting the money raised and making those things do that they do so well before we even start work. Mm-hmm. And I decided to take a break. And being a big Kiss fan, the break in question was with a friend of mine who I've been going to see Kiss with for 30-something years, a guy called David Pearson. And we went off to Miami to the Kiss Cruise #2.
Yep.
Yeah.
We were on the Kiss Cruise. We were really enjoying ourselves. And about 2 days in, we were on deck #7 where the bar is and the sort of administration desk and those kind of things.
Yeah.
And they were showing off the Monster book for anyone who wanted to actually see it.
Yep.
And we turned round and we saw Danny Francis in the queue, looking to see what people were making of the Monster book. Danny, as most people will know, is Kiss's security guy. He's been working with the band for years. He's worked with Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, Cher, Led Zeppelin. His history is incredible. He had a great book called Starman. Mm-hmm. And I said to Dave, there's Danny Francis, maybe I should go over and say hello. And Dave, as he would, said, well, this may be the only chance you get. The guy's about 3 feet away from us. So go over and say hello.
Right. Okay.
I went over and said hello to him. The next day, we were due to have our photograph taken with Kiss, Dave and I, for the part of the package for Kiss Cruise 2. After because I'd met Gene in a London hotel the year beforehand, just completely by chance, and told him, about my movies, and I gave him a copy of my Monty Python film on DVD, which I happened to have in my bag. Make a long story short, when we came out of the picture session, we'd already been to our makeup gig, because those who've been on Kiss Cruise know that you get the unplugged gig, which everyone attends, no makeup, and then you get one makeup gig each. So we'd been to our makeup gig.
Okay.
We're leaving the ballroom. Danny tapped me on the shoulder and said, do you want to come to the show tonight? And I said, we were there last night. He said, no, Gene wants you to be his guest at the show tonight.
Okay.
In VIP.
Nice.
Dave and I thought, wow, this is a great opportunity. So we went off to the show a second night, saw both shows on Kiss Cruise 2.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got back to London, I'd had already a couple of emails from Danny saying he would be, because he lives in London, he would be
Right.
back in London himself within about 4 to 5 days, and did I fancy a coffee?
Mm-hmm.
When I also was, well, this is all going on, unbeknown to me, back in England, my producer, who's also my business partner and my business manager, that's Alexa and Stephen, they're already having problems with the other band we're speaking to, and they're not cutting contracts as fast as they wanted to. I
Okay.
get home and I say, you won't believe this. I've been, we got to both gigs and we met the band, and Danny Francis wants to meet for coffee when he comes home, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
And within 2 weeks, not only were we having coffee with Danny, but we were telling Danny, it doesn't look like our next movie's going to happen. We're having problems, blah, blah, blah. And Danny just started laughing. I said, why are you laughing? He said, that's fortuitous because Gene and Paul want to speak to you. And the rest,
Nice.
as they say, is history. The rest you know. Yeah.
As one door closes, another door opens, so they say.
Yeah.
Well, you've been a fan for 34 years, Alan, and you first joined the KISS Army at the age of 14. I'd just like to know, how did you get influence at KISS at such a young age? What influenced you the most about KISS?
Okay, well, this is a simple story, but I don't say it's a pretty one. I was kind of bullied a lot at junior school, and unfortunately for me, the kids who did the bullying kind of lived very locally to where my parents lived, so that meant that some occasions I couldn't even go out at night because they would still be there. So I became a sort of a bit of a loner to some degree. I was also dyslexic, so they thought I was quite stupid, but obviously that was proved wrong later. So I became a big comics fan, Spider-Man, Superman, the Hulk, that kind of thing, and also a music fan. I was into the bands of the time in England, Slade and Sweet and, Mott the Hoople, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was at school one day in the record room where I tended to sit because you couldn't really get bullied there because there was always a teacher monitoring it.
Yeah.
And people were playing stuff. I think the latest Slade album was on. A kid came in who was in the year above us, and he took the Slade album off, and he put on this album, and he put the needle on the groove, and suddenly it kicked into a song called I Stole Your Love, which I'd never heard of in my life. But I thought it was really good because it sounded like Slade, it sounded like Sweet, it sounded like all the bands I was listening to.
Mm-hmm.
I would be 13, 14 at this point. He put the cover of the album on top of the record player. So I walked over to find out who this amazing band was.
Yeah.
Of course, the cover of Love Gun is led on top, which is the painting and the four of them, such a classic cover now.
Actually,
And
I'm
I took
looking
one look at it, and I'll never forget this. I said to my friend, wow, Batman and Spider-Man formed a band and they got the Hulk in on drums. So for me, it was like the most intense moment in my life because the two things that kept me smiling, the two things that effectively had become my little world, comic books and rock and roll, they now were one. They became one thing.
Yeah.
I remember this was so funny. I went down to the local record store that Saturday with my paper round money and my spending money.
Yeah.
I said, hi, I'd like the Kiss album. She looked at me like I'd arrived from planet Mars because I think by then they were up to about double platinum. I think there was about 9 albums out. I didn't know that. And she said, which one? And this is how naive I was. I said, the one where they look like superheroes on the sleeve. She said, that's probably all of them. I was kind of like, wow. So this kid who's just literally leant against the counter, who I don't know from Adam in my life, turns around and goes, buy Alive 2, you get a book and free tattoos.
Yeah.
So I just said, I'll have Alive 2, please. Bought Alive 2, purely because this kid had said you got free tattoos and a book.
Yeah.
I got it home and I thought it was amazing, and of course the songs I'd heard, because it was recorded on the Love Gun tour, a lot of the songs I'd heard at school, although they were in a live format, were actually on the album. Okay. So I thought, so I'm kind of getting there. Within a couple of weeks, I'd been back and I'd found the Kiss section, and I started to realise they'd done quite a few albums. And so Love Gun was the second album I bought, not the first one, even though that was how I was first exposed to the band.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
We all have a story about Kiss, and you know, it all fits in together. But I just want to go on to leading into how you got that phone call, that first initial phone call. Now, as a fan, did you get that fangirl type of reaction, or what I mean by fangirl? I should say fanboy. I'm just trying to put more joke into this, Alan.
Yeah.
Do you get that reaction as a fan? Go, oh my God, you know, I've been called, or did they actually knew your work previously, what you'd done before?
They were aware of the Monty Python film because that had done very well in America. We'd been Emmy nominated for it through a company called IFC who put it out on television, as well as the cinema release.
Yep.
I think they were aware of a couple of other bits as well. I think sort of various other members of the band were aware of other films I'd done, and also some of the books I'd written, because I've wrote a few books over the years as well.
Mm-hmm.
The first time it ever got mentioned, I mean, just imagine, you know, I knew one day that if things did very well for me as a film director, I'd love to work with Kiss.
Yeah.
But it's a bit like, you know, you work with Status Quo, you work with the Sex Pistols, you work with Monty Python. It's fun, and it's great, and it's, I suppose, a much better job than sweeping the roads. But it's not for me. You know, it is just a job. It's another job because it's someone else you're working with who you have maybe a little bit of passion for, but it's not your life.
Yeah.
Mm.
When the first time the Kiss film was mentioned, I suppose I had a dual feeling. Number one, I looked at Alexa and Steve and saw how excited they were. So I wanted to join in and be that excited. But number two, deep down inside, I was kind of pinching myself and going, is this true? Is this true? Is this true? Like a mantra, you know?
Yeah.
What if it's not true? And I get myself really excited about it, you know?
Yeah.
And the great thing I can say about this, and I must say this on record, is this. Gene and Paul and Tommy and Eric and Doc and Danny and everybody involved in their organization was so good with us and made life so easy for us that the transition between will I get it, won't I get it, hang on, it's mine, Alan, you're the director, probably didn't last much more than about 5 or 6 weeks.
Cool.
Yeah.
And that was very, very nice, because not only are you getting the chance to work with your heroes, but you're also finding out that your heroes are actually extremely nice guys.
And and very easy to work with.
Yeah.
Mm.
Now, was there any other process leading up to getting that director role from this? Was there any other people part of it? Did it have a process, like an audition process, or were you the guy they want straight away?
I'm told, and I don't know the full story on this, but I'm told there was at least another couple of directors that they had been speaking to because they were considering this for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
I had written a letter which I'd written to Gene and Paul, and it was a very heartfelt letter which kind of went through everything, including what I was telling you guys earlier about how I was bullied as a kid and how I had this record, and suddenly, you know, my two worlds collided, and comic books and rock and roll became one thing with Kiss. And how I joined the Kiss Army. There again is a funny story. I'd been to the cinema to see Attack of the Phantom in my local town. And this kid was there, and then I went another night, and this kid was there again. This guy was always there at the cinema. So after 3 nights, the guy said to me, "Are you in the Kiss Army?" And I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. So I thought he meant, "Are you a fan?" So I said, "Yeah, sure, yeah." He said, "What's your number?" I was like, "I don't have a number. I am a free man." It was so funny. And I actually went home and I found out about Kiss Army. And, of course, in those days, you had to write a check for dollars. Well, I neither had a checkbook or any idea of what the translation to dollars was. So I literally said to my father, you know, "Here's some money. Could you write me a check for dollars?" "No problem." I did the check, and in an envelope it went, and off it went. And it seemed, because obviously when you're a kid everything seems to take longer, it seemed to take forever. I actually gave up on it at one point and thought that there is never going to be anything happens here. It must just be something you join and you know you've joined because you sent your money across. That's all there must be. And just at the point where I'd completely given up on it, this package arrived with photos in and a poster and a membership card and some stickers and a patch and loads of things in it completely. So I think that was kind of all that was a big part of it. You know, it's kind of like, it was nice to be, wow, you know, we joined up now. You know, that was good.
Yeah, I just wanted to just touch up on this. Lydia Chris said there was a guest list and Gene wrote out and Lydia was on there. Not for that reason, the guest wish list.
Yeah.
How hard was it for you, being a director, getting all these people involved up to now? Do you have to use other avenues, or was it direct emails? How did you get to like?
I mean, how we've done it on every movie has always been a bit like this. I'd said to the band, would you draw up a wish list of people you think should be in the movie? The wish list came back. By the time we got the band's wish list back, we'd also drawn up a wish list of our own as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, the biggest problem with, you know, that you may get a wish list that's got, say, Metallica on it, or you may get a wish list that's got Black Sabbath on it. But all you need to do is go to the internet and find out that those bands are touring the biggest part of this year. So if you can't tie them down, they're not going to be in the movie.
Yeah.
What we tend to do, and we've done this for the previous 9 movies, no matter who we've been working with, is we'll take those wish lists, but we only kind of use them as a template. In our pre-production period, which normally lasts anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks, that's when 3 of us, and that would be myself, Alexa Morris is my producer and business partner, and also a lady called Margarita Doyle, who's our line producer. We've worked together a while now, and we all sort of sit down and go, right, let's get some phone numbers, let's get some emails, let's find out. It's all well and good having a wish list, but as you know, when you were kids and you wrote a wish list for Santa Claus, everything didn't turn up on Christmas morning. You know, some things did and some things didn't. So we just go out there and literally find the, you know, the people. Now, in the case, for instance, of Loretta Cavallero, a.k.a. Rhett Carr, it was quite simple because I'd already been buying Eric Carr merchandise and memorabilia from her for about 2 or 3 years. So we could literally just send her a direct email and say, look, you know, we need your involvement because we want to make a big thing of your brother in this movie. You own his likeness and his rights, so we need to have a chat with you. In the interim period, and this has not come up just on the Kiss movie, but it came up on the Quo movie and also on the Who Killed Nancy movie. The one thing that's made everybody's life in our business far easier now, and indeed how I met you guys, I suppose, apart from the Eric Carr connection, is of course Facebook. Because a long time ago, you couldn't get hold of anybody unless you knew somebody on the inside. People like Steve Cornell and Lydia Chris, I could get straight to on Facebook. I could join, you know, make a friend of them, send them a private message and say, are you interested? And within 2 or 3 days of sending them the first private message, they came back and said, well, what is it and when's it taking place? So it made life a lot simpler for us. You know, there was always the thing of, you know, there's 10 people been members of KISS over the time period of 40 years. 2 of those people are no longer with us, sadly. Same is true for Bill O'Coin and Sean Delaney. So we know we've got to use archive where those 4 people are concerned. Where Neil Bogart's concerned also, if Neil's going to have a voice in this movie, it's got to be to archive. We can get to people like Larry Harris quite easily, who was there and knows what was going on. Now then, we then have to be logical about it, because obviously the last thing you want to do is bite the hand that feeds and upset the band you're working with. So are we going to interview Vinnie Vincent? Well, I think logically you say no, we're not, because, you know, the guys, they've been suing each other every year for about the last 15. You know? So where would be the point? And also, you know, the more you read about Vinnie, and, you know, I'm not one to cast aspersions, but the more you read about Vinnie on the internet, I don't even know if Vinnie knows what's going on right now in his own life. So I think it's probably better for him, given that, you know, he was only really a member of KISS for 5 minutes. I guess it's 5 minutes longer than Mark and John, but it is still 5 minutes. So realistically, what we need from him, what we need to put on screen once we come to actually cut it, we've got on archive already. We've got old interviews. We've got, you know, the footage of him playing live with or without makeup. We have the unmasking from MTV. So we're kind of covered with Vinnie, whether we touch him or not, you know. I wanted to make a big thing of Eric Carr because he was one of the first guys in the band I ever met for an autograph, and he was such a nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
I knew also that Bruce Kulick would do it because Bruce and I have been in contact talking, as indeed had his brother Bob as well.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I kind of hoped in those first preliminary weeks that Peter and Ace would do it. I think I put my fan hat on, not my director's hat, and thought, I think Peter and Ace will do it. It's only when I took my fan hat off and actually put my director's hat on that I looked at the stark reality and thought, you know what? This house, this greenhouse, the glass in it has been smashed too many times for to rebuild it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do believe that, I think perhaps it would be fair to say that Ace and Peter are probably their own worst enemies. I don't think they, there's no one we can blame for their downfall apart from Ace and Peter. Mm-hmm. So for me, once it became obvious that even, you couldn't do a deal with them and they didn't want to hear what you were saying, and, one last thing I don't mind saying about that subject is this. The very same letter about my childhood and my passion for the band that Gene and Paul had was emailed to both Ace and Peter via, in one case, the manager and in one case, the lawyer. And I didn't even get a reply to it. Now, that letter made one of my production team cry because she thought it was that heartfelt. And I didn't even get a reply to it. So, that probably tells you what page we're on,
Yeah, with some of all the Cadillac High stuff, will the Australian 980 tour get a good airing in the movie as well?
I was just watching some footage a couple of weeks ago that was filmed in New York on top of one of the skyscrapers with
that one.
Eric and Ace and Paul and Gene talking about coming to Australia.
Yeah.
I was watching some live footage from Australia, and I was watching, I guess it must be them getting the key to the city somewhere in 1980, where it seems like the whole of the city when
they were on the balcony on top of the
So I would think yes, it will. I mean, I know, and as a Kiss fan, I'm very aware of the fact that certain things in history are extremely important. And of course, I know that, regardless of how many times they visit places, there's definitely something very special about that 1980 tour of Australia. And I think to ignore it would be, and I have used this quote a few too many times these last few weeks in interviews with people, but it would be it'd be like making a film about Slipknot and not mentioning masks or boiler suits,
Yeah, exactly.
That would be a bit silly. So I think I'm pretty sure, yes, it will make it, but we're a long way from editing yet, so, we'll find out then.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask a question, if I can, Alan. As being a fan yourself and now being a director, how do you look at this doco movie as you direct it? Are you seeing it from a fan's perspective, or are you just taking that fan perspective because you obviously know a lot about Kiss history, being growing up with Kiss and that, but being a director, do you see, as you interview these people that you have so far, two different worlds? Like, you're looking from it as a point of view from a fan perspective when you interview these people, or are you doing it as a director?
I think what you've got to do, and I mean, I did it, I was quite a Python fan, so I did it for Python as well in my preparation, is this. I listen to Kiss music every day, whether it's on my laptop, on my iPod, with my stereo, or via my DVD player, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
For about 3 months during the interim lead-up, and indeed the pre-production period, I didn't listen to Kiss at all. I listened to the Beatles, I listened to Slade, I listened to Motley Crue, I listened to Metallica. I wanted to find out why I got excited about Kiss again. So I made myself a promise that the first time I'd be a Kiss, it would be I Stole Your Love from Love Gun on my iPod in an hotel room in New York the day before the first interview, and that was Bob Gruen. Mm-hmm. So for 2 months I ignored Kiss completely. I didn't buy any memorabilia, which is not like me at all. Sorry, Gene. I didn't buy, loads of things I did not do. I just wiped Kiss off the face of the earth for 2 months. And then by the time I got to New York, I was clucking like a chicken. I was like a junkie without heroin, Give me Kiss! I wanted to do something. I went out and bought like a couple of bootleg albums, a couple of imports. I went back to my hotel room. I stuck on my iPod, I cranked it up, and I put on I Stole Your Love. And the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It was right back to being, 13, 14 again. And I thought, right, you've got to find a renewed passion for a start. And the second thing is you've got to kind of take off your KISS 3D glasses and put on your normal glasses and go, look, if I was making this film from my standpoint, Love Gun Alive 2 would be hugely important. Lick It Up would be hugely important because that was the tour that we first saw them multiple times on in England. So, but I can't make a two-hour documentary that's just based around Love Gun Alive 2 and then bringing the makeup off and lick it up. While it might suit me down to the ground, it's not going to suit the world down to the ground. So I've got to take myself away from that and kind of come back by saying, okay, it's now time to make the documentary. Now, somewhere along the line, somewhere between 2 hours, 2:20, 2:25, I've got to make 40 years fit. Now, I know from doing Status Quo, the whole 40 years aren't going to fit, but what we'll hopefully do is we'll make the important stuff fit. There's probably going to be very little room for the asylum, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be lots of room for Crazy Nights. We have to, I can't see that we'll be spending too much screen time talking about Carnival of Souls, but that doesn't mean there's not lots of room for Monster. We've got to I think we've got to take into perspective what's important, because obviously we're not making a movie just for die-hard KISS fans. We're making a movie for some guy who might like watching rock and roll documentaries, and at best, if we're lucky, might own Kiss's greatest hits.
So just up, so sorry to interrupt there for a second, but just up until now, are you surprised by some of the stories as you interview, stuff that you have never heard before as a fan?
We've been very, very lucky because Gene and Paul know how important this is to us, and we know how important it is to Gene and Paul. And I have to say, obviously, I'm not going to let any cats out of any bags just yet because that will spoil the film. But I believe that Gene and Paul have been more honest about everything than perhaps they've ever been. I believe that Gene and Paul have told us things. I've read every KISS book. I've listened to every KISS interview. I've watched the DVDs 700 times over. I have all the legal ones on one shelf and then about 4 or 5 shelves of bootleg ones. So I know this band backwards. And when I can turn around to my producer at the end of an interview day and go, wow, I learned something today, that tells me that somebody out there might be learning something come next August or September when the film opens.
I just have to say, we just hanging on there, but that it's something to wait for. I know the book Nothing to Lose has just come out now. I just want to just say this: is the book going to classify stuff? I mean, the documentary, is it going to follow the same type of guidelines as this new book that just been released in America with Nothing to Lose, how they interview over 200 people?
No, not at all. I mean, we'd probably do, I would think at a push, we'd probably do about 35, 40 interviews.
Okay.
I know from what we did with, Status Quo and what we did with Monty Python as 2 good examples from what we've done already. Some of those people we interview may not even make the screen, because obviously when you come to cutting it, you're looking for a story. And while they may have some good stories, it might not necessarily flow with what's been or what's coming next. I normally, the way I work, and some directors go, God, you must like making life hard for yourself, but this is the way I was taught, and it's always served me quite well already. When we come to doing a rough assembly, which will probably be about November, December time of this year, I will initially probably do about a 5 or 6 hour movie, which is nothing but talking heads. No archive, no stills, no animation, no touching up, just talking heads. I will probably spend about 2 weeks living with that, to the point of boredom and saturation. And that's when I will go back in after taking maybe a couple of weeks off for Christmas and go back in and go, right, that doesn't work, that does, that might work, that certainly doesn't. And that 5 or 6 hours, that initial rough cut, could be down to 3 hours by January 5th or 6th. Then, of course, we make another rod for our own backs because we start throwing archive at it and stills at it and animation up at it. and it becomes, it goes from 3 hours to being 4 hours and 35 minutes again.
Yeah.
So then we start cutting it again and again. And I think sometimes the only way to make these things work is to start long-windedly and then to keep pulling bits out. And by the time you get to your final version then, you personally have lived with it to the point of tedium. Very, very rarely at any of my premieres, when everybody's excited for you, everyone's telling you how well you've done and how wonderful you are and will you sign this and you're the best person on the planet. And I sit in the cinema and, you know, as much as I'm happy to be there and it's great to hear all these wonderful things, by the time that film rolls, I'm bored sick of it. You know, I can look at it and go, oh my God, please let the next 2 hours pass quickly. I want to go and have a drink, or I want to go and see my friends, or something, right? Because that's what, you know, if you're doing your job correctly, that's what it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It should, you should be looking at it going, what the hell, you know? So.
Yeah. I just want to just to touch on this, if I can. How up until now, now that you've had a bit of a break, how much has been put under the magnifying glass? I mean, we're talking about the interviews that you've just done in the stories. I know you can't give us any information just yet because it hasn't been completed, but how much of the KISS history has been put underneath the microscope here that we know?
Everything, from Gene and Paul meeting through Wicked Lester, through thinking they had a record deal, to finding out they did, to not actually having a record deal, to dropping it themselves, to forming KISS, right through the whole history of KISS, and right up to Motley Crue, Monster and Spider.
Yeah. And
so
like
we've got
I said,
that in the bag now from the 4 guys who are currently the members of KISS, from Bruce Kulick, and from about 23 or 4 other people who include photographers, producers, personal friends, and rock and roll stars.
Yeah. I mean, you just...
Yeah,
go on. Yeah, go on.
I was just going to say, so really, you know, we're good, but we still got another 1, 2, I will say we've probably got another 8 or 9 interviews to do yet. Some in England and some that will take place in Miami before that boat sails on Kiss Cruise 3.
Yeah. And now, with the 78 solos career that they had, when all the 4 solo albums came out, you're obviously going to touch on that direction too, aren't you?
I think it's all part of the solo thing for me is all part of the sort of solo dynasty, Attack of the Phantom. You know, here's a band who've got all the biggest hit singles they've had in ages. They've got 4 solo albums that the fans, you know, loved and hated in different respects. They've got the Attack of the Phantom, the movie that was, in a lot of cases, may have been most people's introduction to KISS by going to their local cinema before they ever saw them live. This band should have been on top of the world. They should have been the happiest people in the world. They were already starting not to like each other. They were already getting very bored with what was going on. They were already feeling like they'd reached the mountain top, but it wasn't anywhere where they wanted to be. It looked like KISS was going to end. And then you have the famous Tom Snyder Today Show.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Gene and Paul, makeup doesn't hide anything on that show. You know, Gene looks like he wants to kill Ace and Peter. Paul looks like he just wants to get through it and keep everybody smiling. Ace is so drunk he may as well be on another planet. He really wants a space ace that night. And Peter's pretending to be a gangster, which Peter isn't. You know? And so it's a strange one, you know.
Yeah. I mean, even with the 1980s Australian, when Norman Gunton, who was a comedian here in Australia, interviewed KISS here at the Town Hall in Sydney, that was on Kissology Volume 2.
Yeah.
There is an unedited, well, there's a full part of that on YouTube if you'd like to dig it out, but that is hilarious. How Norman Gunton sent a letter to the band trying to be a member, and they turned around and said, "Why haven't you responded to my letter?" And obviously, Gene just shrugged his shoulders. But it's a part of history. I mean, that Tom Snyder show you just mentioned, it's definitely got to be in there. I'd like to
Tom
be...
Snyder show, to me, is a bit like... I said this to Gene and Paul, and they laughed. It's a bit like their version of Let It Be. We all see Let It Be, and we're all Beatles fans, and we take one look and we go, you know what, this is great music, but this is also a band splitting up right before our eyes. George and Paul are arguing, they're having big rows in Twickenham studios, John doesn't like Paul anymore, and you're watching this massive rock and roll band split up. Now, okay,
Yeah.
Let It Be was 90 minutes long. The Tom Snyder Show is maybe 20-something minutes long. But it really is. It's Kiss's version of Let It Be.
Yeah.
You know, it's a band being interviewed on a live TV show who despise one another. And that's what makes it probably much more interesting.
Yeah,
You know,
you also
nobody wants to be there.
yeah. You mentioned to us via messages that you've been in contact with the Carr family since 2001. How much, I know with the other interview that's been done, how much of Eric Carr or the family be part of this movie?
Eric's a big part of everything as far as I'm concerned, because I thought as a drummer he was untouchable. I thought as a person who had the fans in his heart, he was brilliant. I mean, I've seen him come out of hotels and talk to people forever, and you know, signing things, and you know, there's so many great stories about Eric. An absolutely lovely human being, and I guess, you know, we gotta remember that Eric Carr and Bruce Kulick are a huge part of the Kiss story. They weren't Vinnie Vincent and Mark St. John. They weren't in and out in 12 months or 5 minutes, as the case may be. You know, and I think, you know, as important it is to remember that, you know, I was talking about this to none other than Eric Singer just a few days ago in Los Angeles. You know, Eric Singer may be fans who go, you know, the doubters, and why is Peter Criss no longer the drummer? Well, I've got news for you guys, and you guys know what I'm talking about. Eric Singer has been the drummer in Kiss longer than Peter Criss.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
So if we want to do something, let's all stand on a big box and shout, you know, Eric Singer. Eric Singer is the Catman as far as I'm concerned. That's not to say I don't know who the first Catman was.
Yeah.
But Eric Singer has, you know, metamorphosized into that role, but was also fantastic on Revenge and Unplugged and all those other unmasked projects, and has been in this band longer than Peter Criss. So isn't it time that we started giving him his due, rather than some of these people who go onto fan forums and seem to have nothing to say but doubtful stuff?
And bagging him. Yeah.
Well, that's true, because in the Gene Simmons autobiography book, they were stating that the time around when Paul Stanley was doing the '89 solo tour, Eric Carr and Gene Simmons went to that performance, and lo and behold, this was way before Eric Carr became sick and got diagnosed with what he had. He turned around and nudged Gene in the shoulder and said, "That will be the next member of Kiss." Now, that was a prediction. That was a prediction that became true.
Yeah.
Eric Singer did become the next Kiss drummer, or the next member of Kiss, but who
Eric
would have thought?
Eric told me a funny little story, Eric Singer, and I don't mind sharing that with you guys. Eric said he came into the dressing room one night on Paul's solo tour, and Eric was wearing a cut-off Led Zeppelin T-shirt, just like the one Eric Carr used to wear on stage, and, you know, was a big part of many photo shoots and everything. And Eric Carr said to Eric Singer, "I see you wearing my shirt," and they both cracked up laughing. And I think that's fantastic. You know, it's a good little story.
Yeah. It's just how it all just, like, seeing, well, just reading Gene's book, and that, whether it's lubricated with or sugar coated or whatnot, but just reading that, and Eric Carr saying to Gene that would be the next member of Kiss, and lo and behold, due to the circumstances that it created, he just happened to be. You're right. Eric Singer has been the longest Catman since Peter Criss, and no offence to Peter Criss. I mean, if it wasn't for Ace and Peter, Kiss wouldn't be here as it is today. I mean, they are the four cornerstones of what made Kiss. But like my partner's been saying, she doesn't believe that Kiss would have lasted the tan of time if they would have kept the makeup on in the 80s and compete with the bands that came out. Kiss would have folded a long time ago.
I think the two things people miss sometimes when this particular story was told, or people debated on fan forums or whatever, is this. The great comeback album that was supposed to be Psycho Circus really features Peter Criss, Ace Frehley. They may be on the cover, you know, but we all know they're not, you know. People like Tommy Thayer and Kevin Valentine and, you know, various other people are actually playing on the album.
Yeah.
That's one thing. The second thing is, and I don't think you need to be Einstein to work this one out on your own, is the following. If they were up on that stage today, they're playing over the years because of the abuse they've given their bodies with various alcohol and drugs and other substances, has become so sloppy. And I'll say this on record here and now, as a fan and also as a film director, Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer would play them off any stage on the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as a guitarist and a drummer, they would play them off any stage in the planet. And if they're happy with that, that's fine. But I personally would find that a wee bit disappointing, you know.
Yeah.
So I just think that's where it is, you know.
It was even showed when they did the unplugged performance there, and the footage of them rehearsing in SIR Studios, and Peter just said he'd play the sort of like backing beat, and Eric would do all the fill, sort of more fill stuff. Yeah, exactly.
I just think, you know, over the years it's become a lot more sloppy and a lot more untogether, and, you know, Kiss, you know, it's like all things. Eventually, the stars have got to align and things have got to become what they are, you know?
Yeah.
There's very few bands out there on the road right now that have got the lineup they had 20, 25, 30, 15, 20 or 40 years ago.
Exactly,
But this doesn't mean to say they're not still great rock and roll bands. You know, everybody in England can't wait for Christmas because they go to see Motorhead. Well, who's Motorhead? Motorhead's Lemmy.
Yeah.
There's many other people being in Motorhead, but Phil Taylor and Eddie Clark haven't been in Motorhead since God knows when.
Yeah.
Motorhead's Lemmy. And I think what's happened with Kiss is over the years, and I'm sure the real fans, the die-hard fans, the people who will be the first in line to buy the tickets or the first in line to be on the Kiss cruise or go to the fan conventions or whatever, understand and know that right now, and indeed for the last 12 or 14 years, the only way Kiss can exist as a gigging band and the only way we can go and see our favourite band live is if it lines up Gene and Paul and Tommy and Eric, because that's Kiss.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Any romantic notion about how you first got into them, and as you said yourself earlier, taking nothing away from Ace and Peter, or Eric Carr, or Vinnie Vincent, or Mark St. John, or Bruce Kulick, who all passed through this incredible band, but taking nothing away from any one of them, Kiss right now would not exist and does not exist without it being the four guys who were on stage and who made Monster.
Exactly. And people are still getting Kiss. They might not know the person's name who's behind that makeup, but those four recognised designs.
Gene Simmons will often say to you, if you sit still long enough, maybe 3 or 4 times in one day, that makeup is recognisable in the middle of the jungle. People might not be able to say that one's Gene and that one's Paul, but the makeup is recognisable the world over.
Exactly.
Exactly. I just want to ask a director's question is, since you're directing this documentary, would Paul and Gene come around and say to you at the end, I mean, I'm only going up till now, not till the end of the process, say, you can have this, you can not have that. I mean, I'm only saying that because of what's happened with Detroit Rock City when Gene was the executive producer. There were some parts that was cut out. Now, who will make that final decision? Would it be you, director, or would it be the guys from the band?
We have final cut. That's the deal that we did with them. I mean, but having said all that, even said that, I would never, ever put anything into something that didn't make any sense to the group. So somewhere around February, early March time next year, we will do a screening for Gene and Paul and Tommy and Eric, and Doc will be there, and everybody will get their say, because that's how we did business on Monty Python, it's how we did business on Who Killed Nancy, and it's how we did business on Status Quo, because ultimately we want to make something that we feel is the right story, but we also want to make sure that the band feel it's the right story as well, you know, so that's going to be important too. Yeah.
And David, I just have to say this. We have got a fan question that just came through via Facebook.
Right.
I just have and this, for the fans out there, we're on the phone line here. And this,
I just must say, guys, I can probably do about another 20 to 1 my time, which is about 10 minutes away. I've got my car, a driver downstairs waiting for me to take me somewhere else. So, so that's just so you guys know. Okay.
Yeah, well, this question comes from one of the fans from Crazy Nights, and I think we already asked this question. Will there be interviews of ex-members? And I think you already just summed that up, that you try to get Ace and Peter in that, and unfortunately no one's on, well, they're not on the same page.
We did a brilliant interview with Bruce Kulick. What I can tell you about Ace and Peter, which I'm very excited about, is that we are going to be given, further down the line, 2 full-length interviews that were done for a movie that never ended up happening in the end, that was going to be put together by Tommy around 2000, 2001.
Okay.
Both those interviews are owned by Kiss Catalogue, so copyright clearance is fine on them. And so Ace and Peter will have their opinion, although henceforth maybe a 12 or 13-year-old opinion, but presumably their opinions haven't changed too much over that time. And of course, as with everything else, we'll be using a whole lot of archives. So, you know, they're presuming nobody's changed their opinion of what they actually said, then yes, you know, by the magic of cinema, just in the same way that Graham Chapman, who'd been dead 20 years when we made the Monty Python film, was a big part of the Python movie due to archive. You know, even Mark St. John and Eric Carr will be a big part of this movie, you know?
Yes.
So everybody will be there. Obviously, neither me nor my team can make people do a movie. All I will say, and it's a story I'll keep on saying right up to premiere day, they were both offered very easy contracts, and they were both offered very big money for the short time I needed them. And in one case, they barely had the politeness to come back, and in the other case, when they did come back, what they said was so derogatory it wasn't worth bothering with. So there you go.
And I want to say thanks to Phoenix Phil for passing that question on to us, Dave. Phoenix Phil, we'll be sending you something to you shortly through the mail for passing that question on to Alan, and he answered that question there. Just one last question I'd like to ask, and I think David got one last question.
Okay.
I know this is a big thing for you also, Alan, and it's going to be one of the probably the best projects you had. But is this going to be released straight to cinemas worldwide, or is it going to some cinemas and then DVD?
The plan at the moment, and obviously this is not set in stone because obviously we still have to talk to the band about various things and to our distributors about various things, but speaking on the 15th of September 2013, so no one gets too confused, the plan is to actually put the film into cinemas worldwide in August, September time of next year, 2014. And then we would probably look to do a DVD and Blu-ray release in time for Christmas.
Sweet. So it might even be on...
Hopefully next year the plan will be that the big KISS projects will include Paul's biography, which is ready to go, and we'll include the movie, and we'll include not only a cinematic release of it, but also the DVD and the Blu-ray. And believe me, anyone who's bought any of my previous films will know this already. We do stack the Blu-rays and the DVDs full of lots of stuff. We'll be putting good footage in there. We'll be putting interviews in there. And anything that we think Paul and Gene have had to say that we think you guys and all the other KISS fans in the world might want to know, but maybe we haven't got room to put it inside the movie, we're going to do a little extra piece, which we're going to call The Gospel According to Stanley and Simmons. So you'll get all that as well, basically. That'll be cool, too.
Well, there you go, Dave. You got your answer. There is going to be a Blu-ray release, release of some type of KISS format, whether it's this movie or
the first KISS Blu-ray release too.
Indeed. Well, it's funny because I was out there banging that drum too and sort of saying, yeah, man, the first KISS Blu-ray release, and officially it is the first KISS Blu-ray release. But there is a KISS Blu-ray just came out bootleg about 5 weeks ago. So it is the first genuine KISS Blu-ray release, though. So I'm proud about that. You know, so that's good.
Well, David, you and I will be going to the premiere next year, hopefully.
Damn right, we will be.
You know?
Yeah, no, you know, we're very excited about it, and we're looking forward to it big time. So, you know, it's good. You know. And David, when you're making a movie and it's called You Wanted the Best, You've Got the Best, subtitle, the hottest film in the world ever, it better be good. You know?
Well, it has to. You just took their catchphrase every time they go on stage, so why not call it "You one of the best"? Now it has to be the best. I mean, last year, David, before you go on to the last question,
Yeah.
they brought the Kiss beer out here in Australia and it said the hottest beer in the world. Unless you drink beer, it's probably not the best, but it's tasty. It's not the hottest beer in the world. It doesn't burn your mouth or anything, but you get the thing. You get the gift. All right, David, you got a couple of last questions before we wrap this episode up?
I suppose being an obvious question, the actual title is that actual song going to be probably features the feature song in it? That you wanted the best.
I don't know yet. The one, I mean, all the way we were. Let me answer that question with a question, I guess. All the time we were making a Status Quo movie, I saw the opening title theme as being "Rocking All Over the World" for obvious reasons, right? The film was called Hello Quo. I thought Rocking All Over the World will play while we're putting the credits up and getting people into the film. When we came to cut it and we came to put the animation to music, Rocking All Over the World it didn't sync right with it. It sounded horrible, and so the film opens with "Whatever You Want." So right now we know we'll be having animated opening titles. We know we'll be having the various things that we do and how we do them. What I would say is we will basically look at those animated opening titles when they're finished, which is not going to be till at least Christmas time, and we will look at which songs particularly fit them. At the moment, in my head, I'd say there's anywhere up to 10 numbers that could open this film. So we just have to see what happens when we look at it in conjunction with the animation and see what happens next, basically.
Sweet.
And I just want to say this. Any last thing, Alan, you'd like to say to the fans worldwide, if they listen to this and whatnot? One last thing the fans be expecting.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say this. I'll put this on record. Forget the naysayers. Forget the fact that Peter and Ace aren't doing it. That's not my choice. That's not the band's choice. That's their choice. Let's just think that what we're doing right now is making the first big, full-blown Kiss documentary for cinema, worldwide cinema. So if you're a Kiss fan, surely that's something to be quite happy about and not quite negative about. The deal is, let us get on with it, and as soon as there's anything to show you, we will do. And as any Status Quo fans will tell you, or Monty Python fans will tell you, just because we're saying August, September next year doesn't mean you have to wait that long before we start feeding you little tidbits. I would think by early New Year we'll let you see one or two little clips, and we'll let you see the artwork, and we'll let you find out what's coming, and we'll make it so that you guys can have a countdown and get, extremely involved in it. And then, maybe around sort of February, March time, when I know what it looks like and the band know what it looks like, I'll come back onto this podcast and we'll talk about it from a different perspective, because then we know what the film looks like.
So exactly right.
Exactly.
And we'll have you. We'll be honoured to have you. And like I said at the start of the podcast, we want to say thank you to ericcarr.com and just creating this opportunity and just talking as a fan perspective and also as the director's perspective. And I just have to say on behalf of Crazy Nights, everyone here, this is just awesome to have, and I'm just so glad that Alan, you had given us the time over your end of the world, and this has just been awesome. Really has been awesome.
No problem. Well, listen, guys, thanks for having me. I hear my Starbucks coffee calling, so I will. I'll nip outside now and find what the day's like. And as I say, just thanks for having me. I look forward to hearing it online.
Yes, and guys, this episode will be up early Tuesday morning Australia time, so it'll be probably Monday evening over in the UK, but this will be up early hours on Tuesday morning. And like I said, thank you so much, Alan, and we'll have you back once you get all the process finalised, and we'll talk about it from a different perspective.
Brilliant. Yeah, we'll look at it next time from the other end. That's what I say. All right.
All right, David.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. All right, David.
Thanks,
we better say good night, and join us this week on Crazy Nights and listen to this wonderful episode. Next week will be another awesome episode, but please give your time and have a listen to this. And thank you again to ericcarr.com. So catch you guys and catch you next week.
See you, Alan.
See ya.